I never thought I'd be telling anyone this. Not like this. But it's been years now. I was there when it happened. September 2016. Near the Cascades, right by the riverbank. The trees were shaking, the wind was biting, and the air had this heavy, damp smell, like wet earth and pine needles. It was a quiet evening, one of those cold, still nights when the world feels like it's holding its breath. My buddy Tom and I had just finished setting up our drone. Thought we'd get a look at the forest from up high. Just another hunting trip, you know? Nothing special. But then the sound. 3 knocks, coming from the trees. It wasn't wind, it couldn't be. I froze. I shouldn't even be telling this, but the drone caught something. I've got the footage still, but I can't bring myself to show it. I don't know. Maybe you'll think I'm crazy, but I'll never forget it. It's funny. When I look back, it all seems so normal. 2 guys out on a hunt setting up cameras and drones. Tom, he's been hunting these woods for years. Me just tagging along, figuring we'd make a weekend out of it. We were only supposed to be out there for the evening, just to test the drone. Maybe catch a few deer passing by the river. It was cold, the kind of cold that seeps into your bones. But it was supposed to be just another day. I can still smell the fresh wood smoke from our campfire and the crispness of the evening air. We'd driven up that gravel road just after noon, the one that winds past Miller's Creek and dead ends at the old fire lookout. No cell service for the last 8 miles. Tom didn't care. He'd been coming out here since he was a kid, and then we set the drone to go up, and that's when it happened. We were far from anyone else, just the trees, the sound of the river, the wind. No one else for miles. The nearest cabin was probably 5 miles back down the road. We'd passed it on the way in, saw smoke coming from the chimney. But out here, where we were camped, it was just us. Tom had this new drone he wanted to test. Said it had a thermal camera built in. I thought it was overkill for deer tracking, but he was excited about it. We spent maybe 20 minutes getting it calibrated, watching the little screen as it rose above the tree line. The forest looked different from up there. Darker. The pines packed so close together you couldn't see the ground. I remember thinking how quiet it was. Not peaceful quiet, just empty. Like the woods were waiting for something. That was the last normal moment we had. At first it was a small thing, a slight rustling behind us, something that didn't quite feel right. Tom didn't notice. He was focused on the drone, keeping an eye on the screen, adjusting the camera angle to sweep over the ridge. I started walking along the riverbank, checking for tracks, when I heard it. A faint crack, a twig snapping far off in the distance. I told myself it was probably just an elk. The woods are full of them this time of year. But that noise kept coming, back at odd intervals. 3 knocks, sharp, deliberate like a branch hitting a tree. My heart started to race. Tom laughed at me when I pointed it out. "You and your Bigfoot stories," he said, shaking his head. But something was off. Something I couldn't explain. I've heard plenty of sounds in the woods before. Branches falling, rocks tumbling down slopes, elk bugling in the rut. This wasn't any of that. The knocks were evenly spaced. 3 of them. Then silence. Then, maybe 10 minutes later, 3 more. Same rhythm, same hollow sound. Tom kept flying the drone, panning it back and forth over the valley. I could see the thermal feed on his screen. Deer signatures lit up orange and red against the blue-green background. A fox moving through the underbrush. Normal stuff. "See?" Tom said. "Nothing but animals out here." I wanted to believe him. I walked further along the bank, my boots crunching on the thin layer of frost that had formed on the exposed stones. The river was low this time of year, just a trickle, really, winding through the rocks. I could see my breath in the air. That's when I heard it again. Closer this time. 3 knocks, maybe 100 yards into the tree line. I stopped walking, stood perfectly still, listened. Nothing. Just the faint hum of the drone overhead and the distant murmur of the river. But my hands were shaking. I shoved them into my jacket pockets and walked back to camp. Tom was bringing the drone down, landing it carefully on a flat rock near the fire. "You look like you saw a ghost," he said. I didn't answer. I just stared at the trees. The drone was still hovering in the air, its little propellers whirring faintly. Tom was adjusting the camera, oblivious to what I was feeling. I wanted to dismiss it too. The whole idea seemed like something from a cheap horror flick. But that feeling didn't leave me. And then, when I stepped closer to the river, I noticed something odd in the snow. Footprints. But not just any footprints. These were large, almost human-looking. But there was something wrong with them. I could see them clearly against the fresh snow that had fallen the night before. Long, wide, and deep. Each print was maybe 15 inches long. I'm a size 11 boot, and these made mine look like a kid's shoe. I pointed them out to Tom, but he just scoffed. "Probably some old tracks from a bear," he said, not even looking up from the drone controller. I knelt down next to one of the prints. The edges were clean, well-defined, fresh. A bear would have left claw marks. These had 5 distinct toe impressions, spread wide like a human foot, but massive. The stride between prints was at least 4 feet. I measured it with my boot heel, walking alongside the trail. Whatever made these was tall. Very tall. "Tom, seriously, come look at this." He sighed and walked over, squinting at the tracks. For a moment, I thought he was going to take it seriously. Then he just shrugged. "Could be a hiker in snowshoes," he said. "Or someone messing around. Out here, 8 miles from the road? People do weird things." I stood up, brushing snow off my knees. The tracks led from the river, up the bank, and disappeared into the thick brush about 30 yards away. I didn't want to follow them. Something in my gut told me not to. Tom went back to the drone, downloading the footage onto his laptop. I stayed by the prints, staring at them until the light started to fade. The temperature dropped fast once the sun dipped below the ridge. We built up the fire and heated some soup from a can. Neither of us said much that night. That night we sat by the fire, barely speaking. The cold was unbearable. I kept hearing it. That sound. Knock, knock, knock. I knew it wasn't the wind. It came from the trees again, somewhere beyond the glow of our fire. I looked at Tom. He was watching the flames, but I could see the unease in his eyes. He tried to pass it off, but I saw him glancing over his shoulder every now and then. "You hear that?" I finally asked. "Hear what?" "The knocking." Tom poked at the fire with a stick. "Trees fall all the time out here. Branches snap. It's just the cold making the wood contract." But even as he said it, I could tell he didn't believe it. The knocks were too rhythmic, too deliberate, and they were getting closer. What started as distant sounds now felt like they were just beyond the tree line, maybe 50 yards out. Something wasn't right, and we both knew it. The drone footage hadn't shown much. Tom had reviewed it twice, scanning through the thermal data. A few deer, a raccoon near the creek. Nothing unusual. But I felt like we were being watched. The back of my neck prickled with that familiar sensation, the one you get when someone's staring at you from across a room. I shouldn't have stayed the night. That's what I think about now. We should have packed up the moment we heard those first knocks, driven back down that gravel road and called it a weekend. But Tom wanted to stay, said we'd come all this way, might as well get some hunting in the next morning. Around midnight, the knocking stopped. The silence that followed was worse. I lay in my sleeping bag, staring up at the stars through the gap in the trees, listening to Tom's breathing as he slept. My hand rested on the knife at my belt. I told myself it was just paranoia. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw those footprints, those massive, human-like prints in the snow. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. Just dozed off in short bursts, waking up at every small sound. The fire burned down to coals, and the darkness pressed in around us. That was mistake number 1. The next day, we packed up early. But the feeling lingered. The wind had picked up, and the trees were bending under its weight, creaking and groaning like old bones. We decided to walk a different path, trying to get more footage before we left. That's when we found the torn tree bark. It was a pine tree, maybe 8 inches in diameter. The bark had been shredded, peeled away in long strips that hung like ribbons from the trunk. The exposed wood underneath was fresh, pale, and raw. Whatever did this had done it recently, maybe even last night. Tom crouched down, examining the marks. "Bear," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Bears don't do this," I said. "This is too high. Look." The marks started about 6 feet up the trunk and went as high as 8 feet. I reached up and could barely touch the bottom of the damaged area. A bear standing on its hind legs might reach that high, but the pattern was wrong. The scratches were vertical, parallel, like fingers had clawed down the bark. We joked about bears again, but I couldn't shake the thought of something else, something larger. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. We heard the knocking again, closer this time. 3 deliberate strikes, echoing through the forest. Tom stood up fast. "Okay, that's not a tree falling." "I told you. Let's just get the drone up one more time. See if we can spot whatever's making that noise." We walked back to camp and launched the drone. Tom piloted it in a wide circle around our position, the camera sweeping through the trees. I watched the screen over his shoulder. For the first few minutes, nothing. Just forest. Dense, dark, endless forest. Then the thermal camera picked up something. A heat signature. Large, moving through the trees about 200 yards north of us. It wasn't shaped like a bear. Too upright. Too tall. Tom zoomed in, but the resolution wasn't good enough to make out details. Just a reddish-orange blob weaving between the trunks. "What the hell is that?" Tom whispered. The signature stopped, just stood there, motionless, for maybe 30 seconds. Then it moved again, faster this time, disappearing deeper into the forest. Tom brought the drone back and landed it. We both stood there, not saying anything. My heart was pounding. I could see Tom's hands shaking as he packed up the controller. "We should go," I said. "Yeah." We broke down camp in record time, stuffing gear into packs without bothering to organize anything. The whole time, I kept glancing at the tree line, expecting to see something looking back at me. We didn't see anything, but I could feel it, watching us, waiting. By the river, near a bend in the creek, I saw something moving. It was quick, too quick to be anything I could identify. A shadow, darting between the trees. My breath caught in my throat. I didn't want to say anything, didn't want to sound crazy, but Tom saw it too. We both stood frozen, staring at the same spot. That's when I heard it. A low, guttural growl. Not an animal, not a bear. It sounded different, deeper. It vibrated in my chest, resonated in a way that made my legs feel weak. Tom had heard it too. He turned to me, his face pale. "That was no bear," he whispered. I nodded. I knew. The shadow moved again, crossing from one cluster of pines to another. It was massive. Even in the brief glimpses we got, I could tell it was tall, taller than any person. It moved with a strange gait. Not quite human, but not like any four-legged animal either. Tom grabbed my arm. "We need to leave. Now." But I couldn't move. I was rooted to the spot, watching that shadow weave through the trees. Part of me wanted to run. Part of me wanted to see it clearly, to know what it was. The rational part of my brain was screaming that this couldn't be real. But it was. It was right there. The growl came again, closer. It sounded almost like a voice, like someone trying to form words, but not quite succeeding. The hair on my arm stood on end. "Go!" Tom hissed. "Move!" We backed away slowly, keeping our eyes on the tree line. The shadow had stopped moving. I could feel it watching us. The forest had gone completely silent. No birds, no wind. Just that oppressive, waiting quiet. We made it back to where we'd left our packs. Tom threw his on and started walking fast toward the trail that led back to the truck. I grabbed mine and followed, constantly looking over my shoulder. The knocking started again. 3 sharp strikes, then 3 more, then 3 more. It was following us, pacing us through the forest, staying just out of sight. My legs burned as we half ran, half walked down the trail. The path was uneven, covered in roots and rocks, but we didn't slow down. Tom was breathing hard, and I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. When we finally reached the truck, we threw our gear in the bed and climbed in. Tom started the engine, and we tore down that gravel road faster than we should have, the truck bouncing and sliding on the loose stones. Neither of us said a word for the first 10 minutes. We just drove. The rest of the day was a blur. Tom and I kept our distance from each other once we got back to town. We'd agreed not to talk about it, not to tell anyone what we'd seen, but I could tell it was eating at him the same way it was eating at me. When night came again, I was back home, but I couldn't settle. I kept hearing the growling, the knocking. The trees outside my window swayed in the wind, but every creak sounded deliberate. Two there. I'd lock the door, check it twice, then check it again an hour later. "I think it's Bigfoot," I said finally to Tom over the phone, though I almost regretted it as soon as the words left my mouth. There was a long silence on the other end. "Don't go blaming Bigfoot for this," he said, but I could tell he wasn't so sure anymore. "We don't know what we saw. You saw the thermal signature. You heard it. Could have been a lot of things. Name one." Tom didn't answer. We hung up shortly after that. I sat in my living room with all the lights on, staring at my phone. The drone footage was on there. I'd copied it before we'd left the woods. I opened the file and watched it again. The thermal signature was clear. Bipedal, moving with purpose. Too large to be a person. And those footprints we'd found, those massive, human-like prints in the snow. They weren't from a bear. They weren't from anything I could explain. There was something in the air. Something we couldn't explain. The more I thought about it, the more certain I became. I'd heard the stories before, dismissed them like everyone else. Bigfoot. A myth. A legend people told around campfires. But what we'd experienced was real. I pulled up some forums online, reading encounter reports from other people. Hundreds of them. Thousands. People from all over the Pacific Northwest describing the same things. 3 knocks, massive footprints, shadows moving through trees, growls that didn't sound like any known animal. Some of the stories were clearly fake, but some had the same ring of truth that I felt in my own experience. The same quiet terror. The same reluctant acceptance that something was out there. I wanted to post about what we'd seen. I typed out the whole story, ready to hit submit. But then I stopped. If I posted it, people would want proof. They'd want the video. And if I showed them the video, they'd want to know where we were. They'd go looking. I deleted the post without submitting it. Some things are better left alone. I was beginning to understand that. Whatever we'd encountered out there, it didn't want to be found. And maybe that was for the best. That night, I stayed awake in my apartment, staring at the shadows in the corners. I pulled out my laptop and opened the drone footage again. The screen showed static for the first few seconds, just the usual interference from the trees. But then, there was a glimpse, something moving behind the trees. So large, so fast. I froze the frame and zoomed in. The image was grainy, pixelated, but I could make out a shape, tall, broad-shouldered. The thermal signature showed hot spots where a body would be warm. Head, torso, arms, but the proportions were off. Too tall, arms too long. I measured it against the trees in the frame. At least 8 feet tall, maybe more. Tom woke up when I called him at 2 a.m. "You need to see this," I said. "See what?" "The footage. I zoomed in. You can see it." Tom was quiet for a moment. "I don't want to see it." "What?" "I said I don't want to see it. I don't want to know. We went out there, we saw something weird, we left. That's it. That's the whole story. But, no, listen to me. If we start digging into this, if we start showing people that video, our lives are going to change. You understand that? We'll become those guys, the Bigfoot guys. Every time someone mentions it, they'll think of us. I've got a job, a family. I can't have that hanging over me. I wanted to argue, but I understood what he was saying. Part of me agreed with him. The other part, the part that had felt that presence in the forest, that had heard those knocks and seen that shadow, wanted answers. So what do? I asked. We delete it. We forget it happened. I can't just delete it. Then keep it. But don't show anyone. Don't post it online. Don't talk about it. Just let it go. We hung up. I sat there with my laptop open, staring at that frozen frame, the shape in the trees. I thought about deleting it. I really did. But I couldn't bring myself to do it. Instead, I encrypted the file and moved it to an external hard drive. Then I buried the hard drive in a box in my closet, underneath old tax documents and winter clothes, out of sight, but not out of mind. I still see it when I close my eyes. That thermal signature, that massive, human-like shape moving through the forest. I see those footprints in the snow. I hear those 3 knocks echoing through the trees. And I know, deep down, that what we saw was real. It was Bigfoot. There's no other explanation that makes sense, but I'll never be able to prove it. The next morning, I felt like I hadn't slept in days, but there was no way to ignore it now. Something had been out there, and it was watching us. I tried to go about my normal routine, made coffee, checked my email, pretended everything was fine. But my hands shook as I poured the coffee, and I kept glancing out the window at the trees beyond my apartment complex. Tom called around noon. "You want to go back?" I almost dropped the phone. "What?" I said, "Do you want to go back? To the woods. I can't stop thinking about it. I need to know what we saw." This was the same guy who'd told me to delete the footage just hours ago. Now he wanted to return to the place that had terrified us both. "I don't know if that's a good idea," I said. "Neither do I. But I can't live with this, not knowing. It's driving me crazy." I understood exactly what he meant. I'd been feeling the same way. That gnawing uncertainty, the questions that wouldn't stop circling through my mind. What was it? Why did it follow us? Was it still there? We agreed to meet at the trailhead the next day. This time we'd go prepared. Better cameras, more equipment, daylight only. We'd hike to where we'd seen the shadow, look for more evidence, and get out before dark. That was the plan anyway. The drive up was quiet. Neither of us wanted to acknowledge the fear we were both feeling. The gravel road looked different in the daylight, less ominous. Just a normal forest road winding through pines and firs. We parked at the same spot we'd used before. The morning was cold, frost still clinging to the shaded parts of the ground. I could see my breath as we geared up and started hiking. The forest felt different this time. Not hostile exactly, just aware, like it knew we were there and was deciding what to do about us. We found the campsite where we'd stayed. The fire ring was still there, our boot prints from days ago preserved in a patch of mud. Everything looked normal, peaceful even. Then we heard it. 3 knocks, sharp and clear, coming from the ridge above us. Tom and I looked at each other. His face had gone pale again. Mine probably had too. "Maybe this was a mistake," he said. I nodded. But we'd come this far. We couldn't turn back now. Not without at least trying to see what was making that sound. We started climbing toward the ridge, moving slowly, carefully. Every few minutes, the knocks would sound again. 3 of them. Always 3, like a signal. Like something was calling to us, or warning us away. That afternoon, we were walking along the river when it happened. I heard the unmistakable rustle of something large in the brush, and then, from behind a cluster of pines, it stepped out. Not entirely, just enough that I could see it. It was tall, too tall. The shape was huge, and it moved like it was hesitant to approach. It wasn't charging us. It was watching. The figure stood maybe 30 yards away, partially obscured by the trees, but I could make out details. A massive, broad-chested form covered in dark hair. The head was large, conical, with a pronounced brow. The arms hung long, reaching past where its knees would be. I stood there, unable to move. My heart was racing. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but my legs wouldn't work. It was no bear, no human. This was something else entirely. "Bigfoot," I whispered. Tom looked at me with wide eyes. He'd seen it too. We were both seeing the same thing. This wasn't a shadow. This wasn't a thermal signature on a screen. This was real, solid, standing right there in front of us. The creature tilted its head, studying us the same way we were studying it. I could see its eyes, dark, intelligent. There was something in that gaze that made me realize this wasn't just an animal. This was something that understood, something that thought. It raised one massive hand, and for a second, I thought it was going to wave. Instead, it brought its hand down against a tree trunk. Knock, then again. Knock, then a third time. Knock. The same 3 knocks we'd been hearing. It was deliberate, intentional, a signal. Tom grabbed his camera and raised it, but his hands were shaking so badly he couldn't get it focused. The creature watched him try, then turned and took a step back into the forest. I thought for a second it might just walk away, but then it stopped, looked back at us, and I swear I saw something in its expression. Not aggression, not fear. Curiosity, maybe, or understanding. Then it turned and disappeared into the forest. One moment it was there, the next it was gone. The brush didn't even rustle. It just faded into the trees like it was part of them. We stood there for what felt like an hour, but was probably only a minute or two. Neither of us spoke. We didn't need to. We'd both seen it. There was no question now. No room for doubt. Bigfoot was real, and we'd just watched it walk away into the forest. Tom finally lowered his camera. Did you get that?" I shook my head. I hadn't even thought to take a picture. I'd been too stunned, too overwhelmed to think about documentation. All I could do was stand there and watch as the most incredible thing I'd ever seen vanished back into the wilderness. "Nobody's going to believe us," Tom said quietly. "I know." After it left, we just stood there, both too stunned to speak. The reality of it all hit me like a wave. There's no mistaking it now. What we saw, what we felt, was real. Bigfoot. There was no other explanation. No bear could stand that tall. No person could move like that, fade into the forest so completely. The fear I'd been carrying for days shifted into something else. Awe, maybe, or respect. Whatever that creature was, it hadn't hurt us. It had the size and strength to do serious damage if it wanted to, but it didn't. It just watched us, signaled to us, then left. Tom sat down on a fallen log, his camera hanging loose in his hands. That thing was real. Yeah, I mean, really real. We just saw Bigfoot. Hearing him say it out loud made it more concrete somehow, more undeniable. I sat down next to him and we stayed there for a while, not talking, just processing what had happened. "What do we do now?" Tom asked finally. "I don't know. We've got proof. Or we would have if either of us had thought to actually take a picture." I laughed, but it came out shaky. "I don't think I could have moved even if I'd wanted to." "Same." We sat there as the afternoon light filtered through the trees. The forest felt different now. Not threatening, just present. Alive in a way I'd never quite appreciated before. Somewhere out there, that creature was moving through its territory, living its life. And we'd been granted a glimpse of it. There was something more I felt, something that went beyond the initial terror. It was a kind of understanding. That thing didn't want to hurt us. It could have, easily, but it chose not to. It chose to show itself, to communicate in its own way, then leave peacefully. That meant something. We didn't speak much after that. We left the woods early, not even bothering to pack up properly. We just gathered our gear and headed back to the truck. The whole drive down that gravel road, I kept thinking about those eyes, that intelligent, knowing gaze. Back in town, we went to a diner and sat in a booth in the corner. We ordered coffee we didn't drink, and just looked at each other. "We can't tell anyone," Tom said. "I know. They'll think we're crazy or lying. Even with the drone footage, people will say it's a hoax." "I know. But we saw it. We know what's out there." I nodded. "We know about Bigfoot, and that's enough." Tom gave a weak smile. "Yeah, that's enough." We paid the check and went our separate ways. I drove home in a daze, still replaying the encounter in my mind, every detail, the way it moved, the sound of those knocks, the moment our eyes met across that clearing. I'll never forget it. Never. Tom and I didn't talk much after we got back to town. The footage stayed on my hard drive, locked away. We never showed anyone. I kept hearing those knocks, those low growls in my mind. It's been years now, and I can't get them out of my head. Every now and then, I'll hear 3 knocks on the side of the house or a low sound in the distance, and I'll know it's not just my imagination. Maybe it's just the wind. Maybe it's a neighbor doing yard work. But I can't forget what I heard out there. What I saw. I moved away from that area about a year later. Took a job in a different state. New apartment, new routine, new life. But it followed me. Not the creature itself, but the memory, the knowledge. Sometimes I'll be walking through a park, and I'll catch a smell that reminds me of that damp forest, wet earth and pine. And I'm right back there, standing by that river, watching something massive move through the trees. I've thought about going back, many times, but I never have. Part of me is afraid I won't see anything, that it was a one-time encounter never to be repeated. Part of me is afraid I will see something, and I won't be ready for it. Tom called me last year, said he'd been hiking in a different part of the Cascades and heard 3 knocks, said it brought everything back. We talked for hours that night, reliving the whole experience. It was good to talk to someone who understood, someone who'd been there. He asked if I still had the footage. I said yes. He asked if I'd ever thought about releasing it. I said no. We both agreed it was better this way. Better to keep it to ourselves. Protect what we saw. Protect Bigfoot, because that's what it comes down to. If we'd gone public, if we'd shown the world what we captured, people would have come looking. Hunters, scientists, thrill seekers. That forest would have been overrun with people trying to find it, trying to prove its existence. And I don't think that creature wanted to be found. It showed itself to us, then left. That was its choice. Who are we to take that choice away? I still hear it sometimes. The sound of the trees swaying in the wind, the distant knocking. I know what people think when they hear about Bigfoot. They think it's a story, a myth. But it was real. I can't explain it, and I don't need to. What I saw out there, what we both saw, it changed me, changed us. And maybe I'm the only one who believes it outside of Tom, but I won't forget it. Bigfoot. I won't forget those eyes, that moment of connection. I won't forget the choice we made to stay silent, to protect something that deserves to remain hidden. 3 knocks at 3 a.m. I hear them still, faint and far away. And I smile, because I know what's out there, and it's still there, living its life, undisturbed.